I know the exact moment I should have confronted her. It was a Tuesday morning in March, and Erin was standing at the kitchen counter, scrolling through her phone while her coffee went cold. I'd made her breakfast. Scrambled eggs the way she used to like them. And she barely looked up. "Thanks," she said, but her voice was flat, distracted. Like I was the delivery guy. I should have asked her right then what was wrong. Should have put my hand on her shoulder and said, "We need to talk." But I didn't. I just poured myself coffee and pretended not to notice how she angled her phone away from me. That's the thing about distance in a marriage. It doesn't announce itself. There's no moment when your wife stops loving you. It's just a slow leak, like air escaping from a tire. You feel the wobble, but you keep driving. For months, I'd been cataloging the changes. How she'd stopped reaching for me in bed. How she'd suddenly developed opinions about movies I'd never heard of. How she'd started going out with friends I'd never met. Friends who apparently had very strong feelings about personal growth and emotional authenticity. I told myself it was work stress. Erin had always been ambitious, and her marketing firm was going through a restructuring. She'd come home exhausted, claiming she needed space to decompress. I gave her that space. I've always been good at giving people what they need. But space has a way of expanding. Our conversations became functional. "Did you pay the electric bill?" she'd ask. "My mother called," I'd reply. "I'll be late tonight," she'd announce. The kind of exchanges you have with a roommate, not a wife. Still, we weren't fighting. I held on to that. Fighting meant passion, and passion meant there was still something to save. I remember one night in April, I found her in the living room at 2 a.m., laptop open, typing furiously. The glow from the screen made her face look foreign. "Can't sleep?" I asked from the doorway. She startled, slammed the laptop shut. "Just work stuff." "Maybe I could help," I offered, stepping closer. "I'm good with logistics." "It's fine, Michael. Go back to bed," she said, not looking at me. The dismissal stung more than anger would have. Anger would have meant I still mattered enough to irritate her. This was worse. This was indifference. I stood there for a moment, watching her reopen the laptop, her fingers hovering over the keys until I left. As I walked upstairs, I heard her typing again. Fast, eager, like she was talking to someone who actually listened. The physical distance started around then. Erin would shower at night instead of morning, claiming it helped her relax. She'd slip into bed after I was asleep, and I'd wake up to find her already dressed, coffee in hand, ready to leave for work. When I tried to hug her goodbye, she'd offer her cheek instead of her lips. When I asked about her day, she'd give me headlines instead of stories. When I suggested we plan a weekend away, she'd sigh and say, "Maybe next month." Next month never came. I started paying attention to details I'd previously ignored. How she'd changed her perfume, how she'd started wearing makeup to run errands, how she'd bought new underwear, black lace things I'd never seen before, and kept them in a separate drawer. Part of me knew. But knowing and acknowledging are different things. I wasn't ready to blow up my life over suspicions. I wasn't ready to become the paranoid husband who checks phone records and follows his wife to work. So I waited. I told myself that marriages go through phases, that love isn't a constant temperature. It ebbs and flows. That if I just remained steady, dependable, patient, she'd come back to me. But patience can look a lot like cowardice. By May, even our physical proximity felt wrong. We'd sit on the couch watching TV, and I could feel the careful distance she maintained. Not close enough to accidentally touch, not far enough to make it obvious, just this calculated space that said everything without saying anything. I started working late myself. Not because I had more to do, but because coming home to her polite disinterest was becoming unbearable. I'd sit in my truck in the driveway, watching the warm light spill from our windows, and wonder when our house had stopped feeling like home. The worst part wasn't the rejection, it was the pretense. The way she'd still say, "I love you," when she left for work, but it sounded like something she'd learned to say. Like muscle memory. The way she'd ask about my day but start checking her phone before I finished answering. I'd catch her looking at me sometimes with this expression I couldn't decode. Not hatred, not even annoyance. Something closer to assessment. Like she was trying to figure out how long she could keep this up before she had to make a real decision. 3 weeks ago, I woke up at 3 a.m. and reached for her. My hand found empty sheets. Cold. Like she'd never been there at all. I found her in the guest room, curled up with her laptop, wearing headphones. She looked up when I opened the door, and for a split second, I saw something like guilt flash across her face. "Couldn't sleep," she said, too quickly, pulling off the headphones. "Didn't want to wake you." I stood there in my boxers, barefoot on the cold hardwood, feeling like an intruder in my own house. "Everything okay?" She closed the laptop again. "Just restless. Go back to bed." "Erin," I started, taking a step toward the bed, but she was already pulling the covers up to her chin, turning away from me. "Good night, Michael." I wanted to sit on the edge of the bed. I wanted to ask her what was happening to us. I wanted to tell her that I could feel her leaving me, piece by piece, and that I was willing to do whatever it took to fix it. Instead, I said, "Good night," and closed the door. This morning, I woke up alone again. Her side of the bed was made, like she'd never slept there. I found a note on the kitchen counter. "Working late again, don't wait up." I'm sitting here now, coffee growing cold in my hands, staring at her handwriting. The careful loops of her letters, the way she dotted her eyes with little circles instead of points. Details that used to make me smile. I keep thinking about that moment in March. How different things might have been if I'd just asked the right question. If I'd been brave enough to demand the truth instead of accepting her careful lies. But maybe that's the real tragedy. Maybe there was no right question. Maybe by the time I noticed the distance, it was already too late to close it. Maybe she was already gone, and I was just too stubborn to let her go. The rain starts just as I pull into the driveway. I can see them through the kitchen window. Erin and some guy I don't recognize, standing close together, his hand on her lower back. They're laughing about something. I sit in my truck for a moment, engine ticking as it cools, watching this scene play out in my own house. The guy is younger than me, taller. He's wearing one of those expensive casual shirts that's supposed to look effortless, but probably costs more than my work boots. When I walk through the front door, they don't jump apart. They don't even look guilty. Erin turns toward me with this bright, rehearsed smile. "Michael, you're early," she says, her voice artificially cheerful. "This is Blake." Blake extends his hand like we're meeting at a cocktail party. His grip is firm, confident. The kind of handshake that says he's used to being welcomed wherever he goes. "Blake Morrison," he says, flashing a practiced smile. "I've heard a lot about you." I bet he has. I shake his hand, notice how he doesn't quite meet my eyes. "Michael Carter." "Blake's from the agency," Erin says, moving to the counter, opening a bottle of wine. "We've been working on the Henderson account together." She pours 3 glasses without asking if I want any. The wine is good. Something I didn't buy. Something Blake probably brought. "The Henderson account?" I repeat, accepting the glass she offers. "That's the one keeping you so busy." "Among others," she replies, her fingers briefly brushing mine as she hands me the wine. Hers are warm from the wine bottle, mine cold from the rain. "We were just discussing strategy." Blake leans against my kitchen counter like he belongs there. Erin's brilliant with consumer psychology. She really gets what makes people tick. I take a sip of the wine. It's better than anything in our usual rotation. I'm sure she does. There's a moment of silence. Not awkward, calculated. Like they're both waiting for me to say something specific. When I don't, Erin sets down her glass and looks at me directly for the first time in weeks. "Actually, Michael," she begins, her voice taking on a more serious tone. "I'm glad you're here. Blake and I have something we want to discuss with you." The way she says "we" makes my chest tighten. I look at Blake, who's suddenly very interested in his wine glass. "Okay," I say, keeping my voice neutral. Erin takes a breath, squaring her shoulders like she's preparing for a presentation. "I've been doing a lot of thinking lately. About us. About what we want from life." I wait, watching her carefully. "I think we've gotten stagnant," she continues, the words coming out practiced, comfortable in a way that's not healthy. "We married young, and we've never really explored who we are as individuals." The words sound rehearsed, like she's been practicing them in front of a mirror. "What are you saying, Erin?" I ask, though I already know. "I'm saying I want to open our marriage." She delivers this like it's a business proposal, calm, logical, inevitable. "I've been researching polyamory," she continues, gaining confidence, "and I think it could be really good for us. It's not about sex, it's about emotional freedom, about growing together instead of growing apart." Blake clears his throat, finally looking up from his wine. It's actually becoming quite common among progressive couples. The idea that one person can fulfill all your needs is pretty outdated. I look at him, really look at him, at his expensive haircut and his designer watch and his casual confidence in my kitchen. "Is that right?" "The research is pretty compelling," he continues, warming to his subject. "Couples who practice ethical non-monogamy report higher levels of communication and trust." "Blake's been poly for years," Erin adds, her voice full of admiration. "He's helped me understand how limited our thinking has been." I nod slowly, processing this. "And you two have been, what, exploring this concept together?" "We've been talking," Erin says, meeting my eyes steadily. "About possibilities." "Just talking?" I ask, raising an eyebrow. She holds my gaze. "Just talking." I know she's lying. I can see it in the way she holds her shoulders, the way Blake shifts his weight, but I don't call her on it. Instead, I walk to the window and look out at the rain. "How long have you been thinking about this?" I ask, my back to them. "A few months," she answers. "I wanted to be sure before I brought it up." "And you're sure now?" "I think it could save our marriage," she says softly. I turn back to them. Blake has his arm around her waist now, not even pretending anymore. Erin doesn't pull away. "What if I said no?" I ask directly. "Then we'd have to figure out what that means for us," she replies, her voice steady, but with an undertone of threat. The implication is subtle but clear. Open the marriage or lose it entirely. I finish my wine and set the glass on the counter with deliberate care. "I need to think about this." "Of course," Erin says quickly, relief evident in her voice, like she was expecting a fight and is grateful not to get one. "Take all the time you need," Blake adds, his tone magnanimous. "This is a big decision." I grab my jacket from the hook by the door. "I'm going to go for a drive." "Michael," Erin starts. "I'll be back," I say firmly, and walk out into the rain. I drive for 2 hours, taking back roads through the hills outside town. The rain pounds against the windshield, and I let my mind go quiet. I don't think about Erin or Blake or their research on ethical non-monogamy. I just drive. When I finally stop, I'm at the old cabin my grandfather built on the river. It's been in our family for 40 years, but no one uses it much anymore. The key is still hidden under the same rock where my father left it. Inside, everything is exactly as I remember. The stone fireplace, the worn leather couch, the small kitchen with its ancient appliances, the smell of cedar and old books. I build a fire and sit in front of it with a notebook I found in the kitchen drawer. For the first time in months, my mind feels clear. Erin doesn't want to open our marriage. She wants to end it without having to be the one who leaves. She wants me to be the bad guy who can't handle her growth and emotional freedom. Blake isn't just some co-worker. He's been sleeping with my wife for months, and now they want to make it official. They want my permission to in my house, to make me complicit in my own humiliation. The smart thing would be to file for divorce, cut my losses, split our assets, start over. But the smart thing assumes I still care about being reasonable. I don't. I write in the notebook until the fire dies down. Plans, mostly. Logistics. The kind of detailed thinking that comes naturally to me. By the time I'm done, I know exactly what I'm going to do. I drive back to town just after midnight. The house is dark, but I can see Blake's car in the driveway. Of course he stayed. Of course, they didn't even wait for me to come home. I park on the street and walk to the house. The front door is unlocked. They must have been expecting me. I can hear them upstairs, in our bedroom. Erin's voice, breathless and happy in a way I haven't heard in years. I don't go upstairs. Instead, I go to the kitchen and pour myself another glass of Blake's wine. I sit at the table and listen to my wife, another man in our bed. When it's quiet, I take out my phone and send her a text. "I've been thinking. Invite him for dinner Friday. I'm ready to talk. The response comes back quickly. Really? Are you sure? I type back. I'm sure. Let's do this right. I finish the wine and go to sleep in the guest room. Tomorrow, I'll start planning the menu. Friday evening. I've been cooking for 3 hours and the house smells like rosemary and garlic. Erin's favorite meal. Herb-crusted salmon with roasted vegetables and that complicated potato gratin she loves. The kind of dinner I used to make for our anniversaries. I'm wearing a good shirt, clean jeans. I've even lit candles. If you walked into this scene, you'd think it was a celebration. In a way, it is. Erin comes downstairs at 6, looking beautiful. She's wearing the black dress I bought her for Christmas, the one she claimed was too fancy for everyday wear. Her hair is down and she's put on makeup. Real makeup, not the quick routine she does for work. This smells incredible, she says, and for a moment, her smile is genuine. You didn't have to go to all this trouble. It's not trouble, I reply, adjusting the placement of a serving spoon. I wanted tonight to be special. She kisses my cheek, and I can smell her perfume, the new one, the one she wears for Blake. Helma should be here any minute, she says, checking her reflection in the hallway mirror. Good, I say, wiping my hands on a dish towel. I'm looking forward to getting to know him better. Blake arrives exactly on time, carrying flowers for Erin and a bottle of wine for me. He's dressed well but casually, like he's been to dinner parties like this before. Like he knows how to navigate the delicate social dynamics of f***ing another man's wife. This is incredibly gracious of you, Michael, he says, handing me the wine with a sincere expression. I know this situation is unconventional. Nothing wrong with unconventional, I say, accepting the bottle and examining the label. Life's too short for rigid thinking. Erin beams at this response. See, I told you he'd be open to it. We sit in the living room while I finish the last touches on dinner. Blake and Erin are on the couch, sitting close but not touching. They're being careful, respectful of my feelings. It's almost charming. So Blake, I say, returning with appetizers on a tray. Erin tells me you've been poly for years. How did you get into it? He takes a sip of wine and settles back into the couch, relaxing into the topic. I was in a traditional relationship in college that felt really limiting. My girlfriend and I both had feelings for other people, and instead of letting it destroy us, we decided to explore it honestly. And it worked? I ask, offering him the cheese plate. For a while, he says, selecting a piece of brie. We eventually grew apart, but not because of the polyamory. That actually brought us closer together. Interesting. I settle into the armchair across from them. And you've been in open relationships since then? Mostly, he nods. I've found that people are more honest when they're not trapped by artificial restrictions. Erin leans forward, eagerly. That's exactly what I've been thinking. All these rules we follow just because that's how we were raised. Marriage is pretty traditional, I agree thoughtfully. But then again, so is commitment. Commitment doesn't have to mean exclusivity, Blake says, his tone becoming more passionate. You can be committed to someone while still allowing them to be their full self. I consider this, swirling my wine. And you think Erin's full self includes being with other people? I think Erin's full self includes having the freedom to choose, every day, to be with the people who make her happy, he says, looking at her with obvious affection. The way he says it, looking at her, makes it clear that he considers himself one of those people. Probably the primary one. That's beautiful, I say, raising my glass slightly. Really, I can see why it appeals to her. Erin reaches for my hand, her touch warm and grateful. I'm so glad you're being open about this. I was worried you'd be angry. I'm not angry, I say, squeezing her hand gently. I'm curious. This is all new to me. We move to the dining room, where I've set the table with our good china. The candles cast warm light across the room, and the wine Blake brought is excellent. Better than the stuff Erin usually brings home. You know, I say, serving the salmon with practiced ease, I've been doing some research myself since Tuesday. About polyamory, open relationships, all of it. Oh? Blake looks genuinely interested, cutting into his fish. What did you find? It's fascinating, actually, I continue, filling their water glasses. The statistics on communication, trust, satisfaction levels, there's a lot of compelling data. I'm glad you looked into it, Erin says, her voice warm with approval. I was hoping you'd approach it with an open mind. I also looked into the failure rates, I add casually. The challenges, the practical considerations. Blake nods seriously. It's not for everyone. It requires a lot of emotional maturity. And honesty, I add, meeting his eyes. Complete honesty. Absolutely, he agrees. I pour more wine, the bottle Blake brought now nearly empty. I open another from our own collection, something I've been saving for special occasions. Have you two been honest with me? I ask, my tone conversational. The question hangs in the air for a moment. Blake sets down his fork carefully. What do you mean? He asks, his voice cautious. I mean, I say, continuing to serve vegetables, have you been f***ing my wife while asking me to open our marriage? Erin's face goes pale. Michael, it's okay, I interrupt gently. I'm not angry. I'm just curious about the timeline. Blake clears his throat, shifting uncomfortably. We wanted to talk to you first, before anything physical happened. But something physical has happened, I state, not asking. We kissed, Erin says quietly, not meeting my eyes. Once, last week. But we stopped because we wanted to do this right. I nod thoughtfully, cutting my salmon. Just kissing? Just kissing, she confirms. She's lying, again. I can see it in the way she won't meet my eyes, the way Blake shifts in his chair. But I don't push it. Well, I say, raising my glass with a smile, here's to new beginnings. They both look visibly relieved. Blake raises his glass with renewed enthusiasm, and Erin's smile returns. To new beginnings, she echoes. We drink. The wine is good, complex, with a slightly bitter finish. I've always liked wines that don't reveal themselves immediately. This is delicious, Blake says, cutting another piece of salmon with obvious enjoyment. You're a hell of a cook. Thank you, I reply. I like taking care of people. That's one of the things I love about you, Erin says, reaching over to squeeze my arm. For a moment, I think she means it. We talk about other things. Blake's work, Erin's latest projects, my engineering work. Normal dinner conversation, the kind of thing you'd have with friends. Except Blake keeps blinking, slowly, his movements becoming more deliberate. Erin is having trouble following the conversation, her responses increasingly delayed. I'm feeling a little dizzy, she says, pressing her hand to her forehead with a confused expression. Maybe you should slow down on the wine, I suggest gently. Blake nods, but his movements are sluggish. Yeah, This is hitting me harder than usual. You've both had a long week, I observe, standing to clear some plates. The stress probably makes you more sensitive to alcohol. Erin tries to stand and stumbles slightly. Blake reaches out to steady her but nearly falls himself. What's happening? Erin asks, her voice slurred with confusion. You're tired, I say gently, moving to help her. Here, let me help you. I guide them both to the living room, where they collapse onto the couch. Blake's eyes are struggling to focus, and Erin's head is lolling to one side. Michael, she says, her voice weak. I don't feel right. I know, sweetheart, I say softly. Just rest. They're both unconscious within minutes. The sedative I ground up and mixed into the wine works faster than I expected. I'd researched the dosage carefully, but I wasn't sure about the timing. Now comes the hard part. I drag Blake first. He's heavier than he looks, and I have to stop twice to catch my breath. The garage floor is cold concrete, and his body makes a dull thud when I drop him next to the workbench. Erin is lighter, but somehow harder to move. She's my wife. I've carried her across thresholds, lifted her when she was sick, held her when she cried. Now I'm dragging her unconscious body across our kitchen floor. I lay her next to Blake and take a moment to study them. They look peaceful, like they're sleeping. Blake's hand is near Erin's shoulder, and I move it so they're touching. They wanted to be together. Now they can be. The duct tape goes over their mouths first, then their hands behind their backs, then their ankles. I work methodically, the way I approach any engineering problem, step by step, making sure each connection is secure. Blake's car keys are in his jacket pocket. I move his BMW into the garage and pop the trunk. It's roomier than I expected, and they fit together easily, like they were made for each other. The drive to the river takes 4 hours. I know these roads well. My father and I used to make this trip every summer when I was a kid. We'd fish for steelhead and camp under the stars. He taught me that the river keeps its secrets. The water is black and cold and deeper than it looks. I strap their bodies together with climbing rope, the kind rated for heavy loads. The weights I attach are concrete blocks I poured in the garage last weekend while Erin was out with her friends. Blake goes in first, then Erin. They sink together, quietly, without struggle. The car follows, its headlights disappearing into the dark water like eyes closing. I stand on the bank for a long time, listening to the water move over the rocks. The sound is peaceful, eternal. The same sound my father heard when he brought me here as a boy. The river remembers nothing. It just flows. The police arrive at 10:30, IMing, just as I'm finishing my second cup of coffee. I'm still in my robe, Saturday morning stubble, hair uncombed, the picture of a man whose wife left him. The boy. Yeah. Mr. Carter? The older officer has kind eyes and a patient voice. I'm Detective Walsh. This is Detective Martinez. We're here about your wife. Erin? I set down my coffee and let concern creep into my voice. What about her? Her parents filed a missing person report, Detective Walsh explains. They haven't heard from her since Wednesday, and she missed a lunch date with her mother yesterday. I rub my face like I'm trying to wake up. Missing? She's not missing. She left me. She left you? Detective Martinez asks, pulling out a notebook. Thursday night, I say, running my hand through my hair. Packed some things while I was at work and took off with her boyfriend. Left me a note saying she was done with our marriage. Can we see this note? Detective Martinez asks. I lead them to the kitchen where I've left a piece of paper on the counter. Erin's handwriting, because I traced it from old grocery lists. The message is short. I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry. Don't try to find me. And you say she left with a boyfriend? Detective Walsh asks, examining the note. Blake Morrison, I reply, sitting heavily at the kitchen table. Younger guy from her work. They've been seeing each other for months. I give them the story in pieces, like a man trying to hold on to his dignity. How I'd suspected something was wrong. How Erin had been distant, working late, making excuses. How Blake had been coming around more often, always with work as an excuse. Thursday night, I came home and found them together. I continue, my voice tired. They told me they were in love, that they wanted to be together. That must have been difficult, Detective Walsh says sympathetically. It was, I admit, but I wasn't going to beg her to stay. If she wanted to be with him, that was her choice. Did she take anything with her? Detective Martinez asks. I show them the empty spaces in our bedroom closet, the missing suitcase, the toiletries gone from the bathroom. I'd spent Friday morning staging the scene, removing just enough to make it believable. Her jewelry box is gone too, I point out, and she cleaned out her half of our savings account. This is true. I'd transferred the money to an account in her name, then withdrawn it in cash. The paper trail would show her accessing the funds, not me. What about Mr. Morrison? Detective Martinez asks. Have you heard from him? No, and I don't want to, I say firmly. As far as I'm concerned, they deserve each other. The detectives exchange glances. They're clearly trying to figure out if I'm a grieving husband or a potential suspect. We'll need to look around, Detective Walsh says, just to be thorough. Of course, I nod and step aside. They spend 20 minutes going through the house, checking closets, looking under beds. They find nothing because there's nothing to find. I cleaned thoroughly after dinner Friday night, before I even started staging the departure. The house is pretty clean, Detective Martinez observes. I couldn't sleep last night, I explain. Figured I might as well be productive. They checked the garage where Blake's car had been parked. I'd hosed down the concrete and mopped it dry. The only thing they find is a small oil stain that could be from any vehicle. Mr. Morrison drives a BMW, Detective Walsh asks. Dark blue, I confirm. One of the newer models. I don't know the exact year. We'll put out a bolo for the vehicle, Detective Martinez says. What about phone records, credit cards? I don't have access to her accounts anymore, I reply. She changed all the passwords a few weeks ago. This is also true. I'd changed them myself, from her laptop while she was in the shower. The IP logs would show the changes being made from our house using her regular computer. "We may need to speak with you again," Detective Martinez says, handing me a card. "Of course," I say, taking it. "Whatever you need. I just want to know she's safe." They leave me their cards and drive away. I watch from the window as they sit in their car for a few minutes, probably comparing notes. Then they're gone. I pour myself another cup of coffee and sit at the kitchen table. The house feels different now. Quiet in a way it hasn't been in months. Peaceful. My phone buzzes, a text from Erin's mother. "Any word from Erin? We're worried sick." I type back, "Nothing yet. I'm sure she'll call when she's ready." But she won't call. She can't. She's 40 feet underwater, wrapped in Blake's arms, exactly where she wanted to be. I finish my coffee and go upstairs to shower. In the bathroom mirror, I look like a man who's been through something difficult. Tired, hurt, confused. It's a good look for me. The neighbors will whisper, of course. They'll say they saw it coming, that Erin was too good for me, too beautiful, too ambitious, that it was only a matter of time before she left me for someone better. Let them whisper. Let them feel sorry for me. The abandoned husband, the betrayed man, the fool who never saw it coming. I know the truth. I saw it coming from miles away, and I was ready. 6 months later, I'm standing by the same stretch of river where I brought them. The autumn light filters through the trees, and leaves drift on the current like memories letting go. I come here sometimes, not out of guilt or sentiment, but because it's peaceful. The water moves the same way it did when I was 10 years old, fishing with my father. The same way it moved the night I gave Erin and Blake their forever. They never found the car. The river bottom is deep silt here, and the current is strong. What stays down tends to stay down. The investigation lasted 3 months. Blake's disappearance made local news. Successful young executive, promising future, vanished without a trace. Erin barely rated a mention. Just another unhappy wife who left her husband. The police brought me in twice more for questioning. Both times I told the same story. Erin was unhappy, she'd been seeing Blake, they ran away together. Simple as that. "People don't just disappear," Detective Walsh said during the last interview. "They do when they want to," I replied, "and when they have the money to make it happen." The credit card records backed up my story. Erin's last transaction was at a gas station 200 miles east of here, the night she supposedly left. I'd made the purchase myself, using the card I'd taken from her purse. The security camera was broken, which was why I'd chosen that particular station. Blake's phone had last pinged from a tower near the interstate. His bank showed a large cash withdrawal from an ATM in the same area. Again, that was me, using the card I'd taken from his wallet. The paper trail told the story of two people planning to disappear together. And people believe stories that make sense. I sold the house a month ago. Too many memories, I told people. Too many reminders of what I'd lost. The new owners are a young couple with a baby. They smile and wave when they see me in town. I'm living in a small apartment now, closer to work. Simple, clean, exactly what I need. Sometimes I think about that night at dinner. How excited Erin looked when she thought she was getting everything she wanted. How confident Blake was, explaining the benefits of ethical non-monogamy. How they toasted to new beginnings with wine that would be their ending. They got what they asked for, really. Complete freedom from the artificial restrictions of traditional marriage. They're together forever now, with no society to judge them, no laws to limit them, no other people to complicate their love. I gave them exactly what they said they wanted. The irony isn't lost on me. I spent 5 years of marriage trying to make Erin happy, and I failed. But I succeeded in 20 minutes with a bottle of wine and some ground-up sleeping pills. A fish jumps in the pool where they rest, sending ripples across the surface. The water smooths itself again, patient and eternal. I take out my wedding ring, the one I've been wearing like a grieving husband should, and study it in the fading light. Such a simple thing, such a complicated promise. "You didn't leave me," I say to the water. "I let you go." The ring makes barely a splash when it hits the surface. It sinks quickly, carrying its 24-carat promises down to join the other lies at the bottom. I walk back to my truck as the sun sets behind the trees. Tomorrow, I'll go to work, fix whatever needs fixing, solve whatever problems need solving. I'll be the reliable, steady man I've always been. But tonight, I'll sleep better than I have in years. Because the river remembers nothing, and neither do the dead. And sometimes, that's the only justice that matters. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm push my content further. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep creating more stories for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.